All right, and we are live. Today, we are going to be covering some really important topics in partnerships, partnership compensation, team structure, how this is changing as AI accelerates. We have on the call with us today Bryan Williams from Hockey Stick Advisory. Bryan, I don't know if we're allowed to call you the godfather of partnerships, but we're going to have to come up with some kind of a name like that. And Hugo Bieber from Point of Strategy on head of partnership recruitment. You two have been across this. You've recently run what is probably the only comprehensive partnership salary survey for ANZ. And I'm going to get out of the way and leave you two to share your knowledge on the topic.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Bryan, for joining us as well on this Pointer and Hockey Stick webinar. Lots of stuff to discuss, and I think we should probably jump in by talking about what we're seeing in the market at the moment as a starting point. I think some of the highlights in the last few months is Strategic Partnerships Manager is the 15th fastest growing role in Australia for 2026. We're starting to see partnerships come into the mainstream a little bit more. And then lots of stuff around AI. That's the topic that's on everyone's mind at the moment. I know it's on yours a lot, Bryan, in terms of the product you're developing as well. But there's also those conversations about how AI is shaping and changing teams as well. So those are some of the areas that I think we should have a chat about.
Sounds good, Hugh. Let's get into it.
So if we maybe jump into the numbers first, particularly from the salary guide, I think we saw overall medium salary at about 165K for partnership roles and going into the 200s once you get into that director level. More interestingly, though, is the commission and bonus side of things. So I think what we've found is most packages, particularly below enterprise, very much salary focused with a small commission component and sometimes a small bonus component. Some have both, but on the whole, partnerships is still very much a salary driven role in most organizations. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the stage of partnership maturity, and we're seeing this in the data reports to go with it. Foundational partnership managers, or those who are building partnerships at companies, it's very early on. It's often don't have a line of sight to the ROI of partnerships. There's strategic direction most of the time, not always, in terms of where they're spending their time, energy, and effort against the partner categories for that. And so therefore, it's quite hard from a CRO, founder, or exec level to really place a commission structure in place with confidence to reflect that when they're looking at the remuneration for an early stage team. Now, as we see companies grow and mature and establish that and have a clear line of sight to what partnerships can and does deliver over a 12-month, 2-year basis, then what we're seeing is companies able to increase and accelerate the bonus and commission structure that goes alongside with those roles when partnerships is used as a strategic growth driver done the right way.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of the changes we're seeing. And we're talking to larger companies that are very much trying to figure out how do we put in a more effective commission structure? How do we make that mash in with the sales team? And obviously where partnerships is one of a few touch points of a sales motion, how do you make sure that everyone's compensated and I guess the pie is shared fairly? It's a conversation we're hearing a lot at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. I think the way we think about it when we're having conversations with C-suite and execs or founders is once we understand what the role of partnerships is, then we can understand the underlying CapEx and remuneration of the team of what are the jobs to be done for their focus it is. Sometimes it's maintain relationships with partners and more of an account manager role where partnerships have been established. And so the basis of that, if a small salary style package would be more effective. If it's partner-led sales, effectively, like go and drive net new business from partnerships which are in place, then that's where the commission construct comes in naturally so, because it's sales with and through partners, and there should be metrics in place and remuneration performance bonuses to go with that reflects that. One of the data points that we know in this report and also previous ones that we've undertaken is, for the most part, the role of partnerships is to drive partner source leads, all trials, all business, net new business back into the business. So the prominent roles in markets still does reflect that as a core focus, but it's not always. It's sometimes let's nurture and grow these partnerships because through product integrations or With others, that there might be a whole development cycle that we don't have to own or build because they provide complementary value add to our offering, which comes into play too.
Yeah. What about thinking about where people in partnerships come from? I think one of the things that has surprised me, not surprised, real learning for me in this new role for me is the nonlinear career path. I'd say, and I think the survey spoke to this, around 50% of people probably come through that sales background into the partnership roles. But one thing I've really noticed is everyone else comes from really diverse areas of business. Some have totally non-linear careers. Some might have come in from a product perspective. Maybe that engineer that's been, or product person that's been building that integration turns into the beginnings of a partnership, and suddenly they find themselves shifting into or running a partnerships function. Other times that customer success. I think if we delve into it, what are really, to you, the key skills that I think make up partnerships? I think to me, it's the sales, it's the account management, it's the relationship side, it's the technical side as well. It's the learning how to bring in so many different stakeholders. Partnership managers at the end of the day seem to be doing a huge amount of juggling around the stakeholders internally and externally. What else do you see?
Yeah, I think you summed it up there. I think we're moving more towards a partner manager of a traditional sense is now more a partnerships operator, that
Yeah.
they're actually truly embedded right across the organization, across all touch points. And I think in conjunction with the changing and rapidly evolving go-to-market playbooks, their role for them and the tools they have to do more, make a bigger impact and be right across the organization, it is growing. We always say from our side that partnerships as a function is overlay across the business. It's not something in isolation. It's not something which works alongside sales, alongside marketing, alongside customer success, or alongside product. It's actually embedded right across all of those departments when done properly and well and set up for success. And we're seeing that evolution play out pretty rapidly as AI tools is able to remove a lot of their admin style jobs that wasn't previously possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into the AI side of things. And I think I've had some very interesting conversations around AI and what it's doing to partnerships in particular. In the last few days, we've been hearing a lot at the Partner Operators Forum from the group of people we've brought together for that. And then there's a lot of stuff that's been written as well. I think to me, the key takeaway is that evolution. It feels to me like you're getting to a stage where you have that partner operator that has that human to human connection between their business and the other business. And effectively, I feel like we're going to get to this endpoint where those humans establish a relationship, but then a lot of it in terms of the day-to-day management, the tracking and everything else will not be that sort of partner manager, but probably more the AI side of things, bringing things up, surfacing the touch points, surfacing the opportunities, but still requiring that senior operator to be able to understand, interpret, guide, act on the AI, looking at some of the outputs, using their knowledge really to see, hold on a second, maybe this is blocked because of, and using that experience and knowledge to work out how to unblock the partnership based on the signals they're seeing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd build on that, Hugo, but just saying, yeah, we're seeing, yeah, the value layer is the context, the relationships, the history, the market positioning, which on top of any AI research, ideation, programmatic work, which has been developed, it's that context which drives the current state and sets the future direction, with AI, a very extremely growing, powerful tool underneath to accelerate the impact of what it can have. And I think that's why a lot of companies from the top down are very, I mean, we've been using the term partner curious, like a hockey stick,
Yeah.
where they're like, there's a gap right now where they all believe in partnerships, they know it can do, but the how, like how do we actually do this and bring it to life for that? And that's why we're seeing the rise of partnerships as a function. And like those LinkedIn reports you mentioned at the start here, companies are looking increasingly to turn towards what is the role of partnerships? What can it deliver by when? How do we resource it? What's required? And those conversations are increasing.
Yeah. And I think as we have this plethora of new companies coming through that are AI native, AI first, we're both going to Sunrise next week. And anyone that's watching, look out for us there. It'd be great to meet in person. I think when you look through the attendees there, half the startups, at least probably 90% even, are AI this, AI for that. And I'm wondering, I'm curious, do we think partnerships is actually going to come earlier into that sales motion with these type of businesses, and will become, and do we see a shift forward where partnerships doesn't come in much later on in the company's growth phase, but comes in, I don't know, maybe as one of the first routes into market?
Yeah, it's definitely accelerated forward of what can it do right now to get going, and it's really just one of the key pillars. It's how can we get distribution and leverage rapidly, right? There's also for the AI startups coming through, the conversations we're having founders there is they're all trying to build proprietary data, they're all trying to build a data moat, they're trying to solve industry workflows, and they're trying to enable network effects. And they can do all those things, but without distribution or leverage, which is we defined ecosystem as working with those who have access to or are talking to our ideal customer profile. And the distribution and leverage is what these early stage companies are looking to seek, deploy, and enable to drive the AI tooling or what they're solving for at rapid scale. And I think that's a bit of a theme, is a key pillar to get these AI. You can have all the potential at once, but if it doesn't go to market, it doesn't go to market rapidly, then how impactful can it be?
Yeah, but on the flip side, I had coffee earlier this morning with a VC fund, and one thing they said is they're seeing so many companies doing AI for this, domain experts in certain areas, but there's 10 different companies all with the same domain experts, all building the same sorts of tools. And the VC's approach was like, we're just going to sit and wait and see what comes through, because 9 out of 10 of those are not going to get anywhere. And yet, I think we're getting into this stage again where a lot of people want to be founders. A lot of people can vibe code and set up their own company at the weekends. And it's probably never been easier to do a startup and do something in that area. But I think to me, one of the things I'm seeing is just there's so many people trying to do the same thing. I saw it in agtech previously, where you had all these companies at the early stage trying to compete with each other and actually missing the bigger picture because of that. So, I guess to get to the question I'm trying to ask, really, when do we see those companies start to form partnerships as a sales motion? Do we think that AI native companies have a different strategy, really, in terms of their growth and sales and partnerships?
I think any key partnership which is adopted and accelerates has two key parts. The first one is they solve a core problem in market where there's a gap. And also with that, there's a unique value proposition of some sort. So to those 10, we're all doing this. What does this one do around it? And the second part for it, partnerships only work when there's something for the other partner. And that's often missed. So the hopes and dreams for distribution and leverage for an emerging AI tool to be like, oh, this is amazing. And if only insert big logo, insert big channel, insert big marketplace can drive rapid adoption. If it's doesn't have a unique value proposition, if it doesn't solve a problem, if it doesn't have product market fit for at least it solves, then what that means if you don't have those pillars is it's highly likely you don't have anything to offer the partner. You might not be solving a problem for their core customer base, pipeline, close, lost, or around it. There might not be enough upside for them to drive distribution. Companies always typically, they want partners to like, please go do this, go do that. Like if only do it. But the conversation where they don't spend any time in what we call a validate phase, where you're actually just pressure testing, like where does those ideal partners spend their time, energy, and effort? What do they care about? What is their North Star? And how is what we're building ladder against that? A simple conversation with companies we're working with when they talk about their top 1 or 2 partners would say, what percentage of revenue impacts would your offering mean for that company? Would that you want to partner with? Would you drive 2%, 5%, 10, 20% of their revenue? Would you drive commission construct? Would you solve awareness, distribution? Would you be able to be a value add to them? Because if you don't approach it with that in mind, it's not about you, it's about them, solve that at scale. And they're not going to spend their time, energy, and resources and effort to work with you. And you just won't get the cut through, like you mentioned, Hugo.
Yeah. I think someone here on the chat is asking a bit more about compensation, and obviously the salary guide, and we'll put the link in after this. In fact, there's a QR code I can show now, but actually just before we get onto that side of things, I don't know if the screen is showing, but just a couple of the insights that we had in the report. First of all, 46% of organizations have expanded their teams. And I think we've both been seeing this massive evolution, hence the hockey stick pointer partnership as well, in terms of growth in teams. We're seeing some of the larger companies that already have established partnership functions grow them, but then we're seeing other companies working with you to set the strategy to then bring operators in. And I think that's probably one of the big evolutions that we're seeing, where companies at that growth post Series A or type stage are now starting to speak to you and figure out, how do we put in place a strategy first to do partnerships, and then how do we build the team from it? And that, it seems to be a bit of an evolution from the previous way of, let's hire someone who's done this before at a Zero or Employment Hero or somewhere else. Let's put them in. Let's get them starting to put together a strategy and then execute on it. And I think the approach that I talked about just now, working in tandem with you and Hockey Stick, certainly to me seems to be bringing things to life much, much earlier, probably 6 to 8 months from start, as opposed to probably a year before you start to see green shoots with the old
Yeah.
teams.
Yeah, great, Hugo. And I'll give it a few examples. The company I've been working with recently, all their from marketing perspectives, right? Like, where's 100% of their leads come from to flow through? What we're seeing increasingly is digital paid channels. They're just getting more and more expensive and with less impact. So more expense, less impact to drive through. And that sort of cascades down. What does our sales outbound team look like? Like, how impactful? What does that look like for channel? What does our inbound channel look like? And so this is from the sort of C-suite founder down, is what is the role of partnerships? And this correlates to that stat on the left of 46% of, a lot of them are investing in partnerships in some aspect. And that could be either like a secondment role, it could be adding net new headcount, it would be investing in this as a channel. Some of the enterprise businesses we're working with, doubling down on partnerships whilst they're looking to limit their sales teams outbound approach more, and like, how can we grow with and through others? But equally, there's still this transitional phase we're seeing now, which I think will probably continue for over the next year or so, is that on the right, these people in partnerships are expected to do too much. They're expected to over-deliver and work in isolation. They don't have the partnership infrastructure to support them, either through partner operations, partner reporting, although AI can help. And so a lot of them are silently frustrated in the background, like, oh, we could do it, but only we can't get the buy-in for it. And I think there's a gap here, that partnerships is something that you're building over time, and companies really have to have really a 2-year vision that we're bringing this to life. Year one's a foundational year. We'll get the results into year 2 as we're getting it going. Because what it's not, and I think it's often referred towards of, oh, let's put in someone in partnerships, let's get a fire hose of customers next week, next month, next quarter. But we're looking to embed our motion with and through partners to be able to grow that, to show a line of sight of ROI. Interestingly, we've been operating 4 years now, Hockeystick, and it's quite common with companies that we've been working with that in year 2 they end up hiring a head of partnerships. And the reason for that is they start to build the momentum. They're able to show a line of sight to ROI of partnerships. They're able to show that, be able to put numbers behind the rationale, logic, and commercial case that a CFO, CRO, and a founder can go, this is working. Now let's invest more partner marketing, partner managers, head of partnerships, and grow into it, because now we've got confidence in a line of sight in a commercial lens. And so we are seeing that shift and grow in time. However, for those, and I think that the stats are, Hugo, that there's 14,000 plus people working in partnerships in Australia right now. But a lot of them are frustrated if they don't have the enablement support from the top down to understand what's required to bring those partnerships to life. And so there's this open market that we've got right now, or partnerships talent looking to work out what's next. The other thing, just to build on that, is, you said at the start of the call, is that no one's born in partnerships. You don't go and do a Bachelor of Partnerships, a Master of Partnerships, and this sort of thing. So the capability of those people on the right are probably under pressure to deliver something which they haven't done before, they haven't validated. It's more built on hopes and dreams or spray and pray, rather than something that's programmatically developed like you would for your own marketing channels or sales channels. Partnerships too commonly just sits off on the side of and go do.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think one of the things that really came out in the report is what we could probably call the retention problem. It's not just the 73% that are open to change, but I think most people received the pay rise last year, according to the report. I think 72% did. But that's not stopping them still looking to leave. And it's not just the money that's there as a form of retention. I think it goes back to the point you just made around how partnerships is seen within the organization. I think going back to the Partner Operators Forum dinner, one of the key topics of conversation was just like, how do we make sure that we feel valued within the larger organization as a business? You see a lot of stuff and read online about partnerships just fighting for that 5% of time in a sales meeting with the overall sales team. And it's just not necessarily the attention it needs despite the value it brings to an organization within the functions.
Yeah, that's right. But I think it's more education is needed at the founder C-suite level. We're at the stage of year right now where a lot of people are thinking about budgeting and planning for next year. And if I think of a conversation I had last week with the head of growth of probably a Series A company, and they're saying, do I put on another salesperson or do we hire into partnerships? And they don't do much in partnerships today. And I said, the decision is if you want a salesperson to bang the phone and to chase business, you're going to be dependent on them. It's going to be slower to go. That's what it can do. But in terms of putting a dollar in, dollar out per machine. But I said, if you put a partnerships hire in today, then you're setting up next year's growth for a foundational. And the way I thought about it was, whilst we can get some quick wins and get it going, firstly, you'll get out of it what you put into it. So hybrid role, full-time role in partnerships. But if you build the foundations this year for it, alongside your committed go-to-market, then next year you'll be able to grow into that. And one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about, and probably the main problem to be solved with partnerships, is like, what is the line of sight for partnerships by when? Like, how do we actually make an investment now, and what could that produce, and what does great look like, and how do we get there? And without that top-down support to understand the levers of either potentially been there, done it, or seen it work in another organization, or be understand the how to and have belief in it, then they're able to bake it into their go-to-market plan with a CapEx expense, that knowing that this is a future investment now. And sometimes we call it no regrets activity or foundational building for it to be able to grow into partnerships rather. So coming back to those heads of growth conversations is, can you go it alone? Do you have enough reach for your marketing team to reach all the audiences, or can you go faster with partners? On product side, it was like, do you have to build it all yourself, or you can partner with someone for a better given narrative? And on the sales front is, do you have all the insights? Do you have influence, insights, and intros from partners who are talking to your ICP, which you don't? And can you do it through your own sales channels alone? And so with that sort of thinking, then you can start to understand from a top down, there's a holistic approach where partnerships has benefits right across the go-to-market, and it's not in isolation, which leads to the resourcing conversation then. All right, what does this look like to go from 0 to 1, 2 to 5, or good to great? And what does that look like?
So I'm just I see we've got a comment from Matteo. There needs to be purpose. Some people love the money. Others want more holistic benefits and outcomes. Much of the whole AI landscape seems to have forgotten something about the human behind everything. It's so true, Matteo. And I think going back to one of the points we were discussing earlier around that sort of operator versus manager being supplemented by AI, like how do we see, obviously partnerships is a growing area as a role. Do we think it's going to continue to grow in this way, augmented by AI? Obviously, it's a smaller function within organizations. There's very limited headcount in a partnerships team already. So to me, I see AI as really supplementing and supporting existing headcount and hopefully adding to more growth as opposed to removing headcount in the first place. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the role of partnerships, like we said before, as the operator mindset, is establishing, enabling, and partner enablement's massive, which is done by people and accelerated through AI tooling. And then the second layer below, the leap in February of the release of cloud tools and the connectors and the increase in MCPs, a lot of these product partnerships to create a single system of record is able to be done and accelerated through some of these connector tools below the fold. And I think we're going to see that continue.
Yeah.
But effectively, the partnership operator who's able to triage, have context, have history, there's an opportunity for them to be more effective more than ever before. And so something we look at is what percentage of revenue comes from partnerships today. What do you want it to be ideally, and what's possible? And then from there, you're able to get a view of how you should treat it, invest in it, whether in people, tooling, processes, or programs to bring it to life to what's possible.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking back a little bit more to around the reason why so many people are mobile and open to change in the industry. And I think the survey said that career advancement and lack of progression are about 40% of account for 40% of the reasons why people leave. And it's a small function within a larger organization typically. What progression areas do we see for people in that middle layer of partnerships? The partnership manager type role that we were talking about earlier at a sort of 165K median salary. If you were speaking to one of them and giving them guidance right now as to how to advance their career, obviously become more of an operator, use the AI tools to supplement and give you the time to not just be preparing QBRs for days and days, but actually really getting the AI to do the lifting and then diving into the detail and fixing it with humans. What other advice would you give to them?
Everyone needs to be responsible and own their patch. And what I mean by that is operate like an entrepreneur and build your own story and narrative of quantitative impact of what you've done. We've come into an organization, you grew partners by X, it started at this, you grew partner sourced revenue from 5% to 15%, which made a material impact of XYZ revenue, lifetime value XYZ, expanded in new geos, solved retention, improved gross dollar retention, net dollar retention. Be able to talk to quantifiable metrics, because the next job that you're going to go to, they're going to buy that story and they're going to want you to go do that there or expand upon.
Yeah.
And so it's not a case of I worked at X company and worked in partnerships. What did you do there? What impact did you make? I think that there's no hiding anymore. Everyone's got to make an impact, deliver outcomes to go with it. And there needs to be that narrative. And in terms of growing your career, people are going to employ you for the next job to go deliver a similar line of site to ROI and impact you've made to be able to do. And I think at a high level, if driving net new business is the role of your goal, the name of your role and sort of impact, we're looking at a 3 or 4x return on top of your base plus super. So for anyone listening to this call right now, are you delivering that now, or are you building capability, building partners to drive that? Because when they're looking at terms of potential changes or team changes or downsizing or reshifting, if you're making impact and driving that forward, then you're not only safe, you're actually a protected asset for the business. And if you are delivering that 3 or 4 times role, you've earned the right to go back to your manager, leader, and CFO and sort of say to renegotiate that salary and drive up beyond that 165 million we're talking about.
Yeah. I think for anyone on this call that's thinking about their next move, that is the most sage advice you can get. Bryan, I'm conscious that we're on the half hour and we put that in the diaries. Obviously, if anyone would like to download the salary guide, there's a QR code on screen for that if you haven't already. I'm always happy to chat with people looking at their next move and considering that. And Bryan, thank you so much for your time and your insights as well. I know you've got your own webinar coming up in a few weeks' time to really talk about and debut the AI tool that you've built. So the link for that will be on Bryan's LinkedIn. And I don't know if you want to say another word or two about that quickly.
No, thanks, Hugo. Yeah, so we've built some AI tooling where we're going to show the possibility, potential of partnerships, so partner sourced and influence leads. You'll be able to compare how you stack up benchmark today compared to others in the industry, and you'll be able to receive a board level report and download on the back end of that session that you can take to your leadership team to get more investment and keep the momentum going.
It's going to be a great webinar, so look forward to that one, and thank you all for your time. And if anyone's at Sunrise in Sydney next week, look out for Bryan and myself.
Thanks, Hugo.